This afternoon was raw emotions.
Coming up, a tragic moment in university history is remembered on campus. The pain still fresh 33 years later. We have scenes from the emotional Rose-Laying Ceremony.
Plus, lives lost, the 35 Syracuse abroad students who died in the attack, what they are being remembered for over 3 decades later.
And look back, act forward. It's the motto of SU's Remembrance Scholars. We have how the university is honoring these students. News Live at 6 starts right now.
Today marks the emotional height of Syracuse University's Remembrance Week. Good evening, I'm Liam Crowley.
And I'm Ricky Sayer. 35 Syracuse University abroad students died when a terrorist bomb took down Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland. That was 1988. Today, 33 years later, the university honors both those 35 students and the students today who work to make sure the fallen are never forgotten.
We have team coverage tonight of the culmination of SU's Remembrance Week events. John Perik is outside Hendricks Chapel, Jake Morel is outside the Schine Student Center, and Teagan Brown is here with us in studio.
But first, we turn to CitrusTV reporter Nicole Aponte, who was at today's Rose-Laying Ceremony. She tells us how the Remembrance Scholars honored the lives lost.
(2:03 p.m.), the exact time that Pan Am Flight 103 was bombed over Lockerbie, Scotland on December 21st, 1988. The time that tragedy struck SU and the world. Today's ceremony commemorates the 270 lives lost. The 35 SU study abroad students, the Lockerbie 11, and anyone who has been affected by terrorism.
We gather to remember together, to revitalize together, to relate together, to alleviate the burden of carrying a legacy alone, to share company and reflect, reminisce upon moments and their significance, recounting tales of their love, the ordinary and extraordinary moments, however bittersweet.
Remembrance and Lockerbie scholars shared a little piece of the SU student they represent.
And Theodora Cohen believed in theater not for its own sake, but she truly believed it could change people, societies, and the world around her.
This week has allowed scholars to expand their knowledge on the attack and the lives that were taken too quick.
I've sat through and partaken in Christmas services where students who go to Lockerbie Academy are reminded what happened to their town in 1988 and continue to remember all 270 souls that were lost that night.
It reminds students they are a part of something bigger than themselves. Families, friends, and the SU community gather today to perform a simple act.
I lay this rose on behalf of Sarah and act forward in her love. I lay this rose on behalf of Luann and act forward.
The laying of a rose that represents a life. Nicole Aponte, CitrusTV News.
Thanks, Nicole. We have more information about the Rose-Laying Ceremony on our website, citrustv.com.
We'd like to take a moment now to remember and honor the 35 SU students who died during the attack. Stephen Russell Burrell was known for his sense of humor and warm smile.
Kenneth John Bissett was a student from Cornell University studying in London through the SU Abroad program.
Stephen John Boland was a member of the Delta Tau Delta fraternity and loved the Beatles.
Nicole Elise Bullinger was a senior who was passionate about theater.
Timothy Michael Cardwell was a member of the ROTC and was posthumously awarded the Army Commendation Medal.
Eugenia Theodora Cohen was a drama major who was passionate about acting and singing.
Eric Coker studied at the University of Rochester.
His twin brother Jason Coker was a writer for the Daily Orange.
Gary Leonard Colasanti was an avid skier and was a member of Sigma Alpha Epsilon.
Scott Marsh Corey was an SU junior, and a memorial scholarship was set up in his name after the crash.
Gretchen Joy Stater studied at the Maryland Institute of Art and went to London through SU Abroad.
Shannon Davis was passionate about children and had a plan to open a daycare.
Turin Michael Ergin was an actor and a member of the SU lacrosse team.
John Patrick J.P. Flynn was a Colgate University junior and a player on the men's basketball team.
Pamela Elena Herbert was a Bowdoin College junior who won many academic awards during her college career.
Karen Lee Hunt was an English major working towards a magazine career who is remembered as a warm and caring person.
Christopher Andrew Jones was an SU junior who wrote for the Daily Orange and reported for WAER.
Julianne Frances Kelly was a public relations major who loved to write poetry in her spare time.
Wendy Ann Lincoln studied photography and illustration and had a great joy of helping others.
Alexander Lowenstein was a member of the Zeta Psi fraternity and dreamed of becoming a clinical psychologist.
Susan Marie Mayazga studied social work and wanted to better the lives of others in her future.
Richard Paul Manetti studied journalism and wrote that his philosophy to life was to make the most of everything.
Anne Lindsay Uchensek studied sign language to fulfill her goal of bettering the lives of deaf children.
Peter Raymond Pierce was coming home from Florence, where he was pursuing a master's to teach design.
Frederick Sandy Phillips had returned to school after working in business and is remembered for his love of music and poetry.
Sarah Susanna Buchanan Phillips was a junior at the University of Colorado at Boulder and wanted to either be a publisher or a lawyer.
Louise Ann Luann Rogers was a senior studying abroad and is remembered as someone who did everything with style.
Thomas Britton Schultz was a member of the Phi Data Theta fraternity and planned to attend law school after graduation.
Amy Elizabeth Shapiro was a passionate writer and photographer who worked for multiple publications during her time on campus.
Cynthia Jones Smith was a member of the Delta Phi Epsilon sorority and studied fashion and design.
Mark Lawrence Tobin was studying to be a sports journalist and is remembered by his friends and family as always being optimistic.
Alexia Catherine Saris was a junior who is remembered by her professor as one of the most promising photojournalists of her class.
Nicholas Andres Reynolds always carried his camera, guitar, and skateboard wherever he went and is remembered by his favorite expression, "Go for it."
Keisha Whedon is remembered for her love of children and dedication to music.
Miriam Luby Wolf spent her semester studying abroad dance and acting and is remembered by her family for her exuberant personality.
Each of the 35 students are represented by a Remembrance Scholar today. Throughout the year, these students work to live by the motto of looking back and acting forward. The university honored those students at a convocation ceremony this afternoon. Our team coverage continues now with Citrus TV's John Perik, who is live from outside Hendricks Chapel, where the convocation took place. John?
Liam, good evening. Following the Rose-Laying Ceremony, a convocation was held just behind me in Hendricks Chapel, and this was another part of SU's effort to remember the 270 people who died in the bombing of Pan Am Flight 103. The convocation included a few words from SU's Chancellor Kent Severode, as well as a presentation of the Remembrance Scholars. It also included a message from Remembrance Scholar speaker Jared Conbagley, who I spoke with afterwards, and he said walking across the stage today in the presence of the victims' families was one of the most emotional experiences of his life.
You get emotional about it because not everybody gets to do that. Not everybody gets to represent this wonderful person.
The convocation marks an end to this year's Remembrance Week, but scholars told me that the lives of the 270 people who died in the Pan Am flight bombing at the hands of terrorists will never be forgotten. Reporting live outside of Hendricks Chapel, I'm John Perik, Citrus TV News.
So much for that report. Last night, Remembrance Scholars put on one of their more unique events, the Celebration of Life. CitrusTV reporter Jake Morel is outside of the Schine Student Center with more on last night's event.
Thanks, guys. I'm here outside Schine Student Center where Remembrance Scholars put on the Celebration of Life event last night. An important event for Remembrance Week dating all the way back to 2006, the Celebration of Life includes a night of performances, ranging from a cappella to dances to poetry readings and more. We were there last night. Check it out.
Remembrance Week is always an important time at Syracuse University.
Every year, the Remembrance Scholars come together to put on a week of events to honor the lives lost in the Lockerbie bombing 33 years ago. The Celebration of Life is one of the last events of the week and honors the lives lost in a different way than other events. Students perform a cappella, recite poetry, perform dances, and even read letters written by those lost in the bombing. The Lockerbie Scholars say that this event gives them a chance to be a little bit more personal with the families.
I think it adds a very personal aspect to Remembrance, and it lets all the families get together and see each other before the Rose-Laying, which is also a very formal event.
The emotional performances over the years have even inspired some to become Remembrance Scholars.
Didn't know much about Remembrance before, and I was deeply and truly inspired by the emotions that were carried by the Remembrance Scholars.
Sala, who hosted the event, says that the creativity that the event inspired helps move us forward while we honor the past.
Choosing to focus on the growth and the light that we've seen since then in the response to the tragedy.
Remembrance Scholars look to carry on this unique, long-lasting tradition for years to come. They're dedicated to honoring the past while focusing on celebrating life in the present day. For CitrusTV News, I'm Jake Morel. Ricky, Liam, back to you guys.
Thanks, Jake. Remembrance Week is coming to an end, but the annual series of events that take place will be something remembered by those who took part in them. CitrusTV reporters have been bringing you coverage throughout the week, and Teagan Brown is here to give you a recap of what took place at each event.
Thank you, Liam. It's been 33 years since the bombing of Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland. But that doesn't mean Syracuse University has forgotten about the 35 lives that were lost. Remembrance Week occurs each year to reflect on the lives of these students, and multiple events take place to do so. I had the chance to attend a few of these events, but among all of the reporters here at Citrus TV, we were able to bring you information on all of them.
Remembrance Week at SU is a time to reflect on the lives lost over 3 decades ago in the bombing of Pan Am Flight 103. Syracuse University holds a series of events every year to remember the 35 students who lost their lives. The week began with a night full of music, as well as Remembrance Scholars and others participating in a candlelight vigil. One scholar spoke about what taking on this responsibility means to her.
I think remembrance means to me that you're carrying on the legacies of the students that lost their lives and really acting as how they would act and carrying on and supporting the causes that they supported when they were alive.
Pan Am 103 was bombed over Lockerbie, Scotland in 1988, but a representation of the plane seats and where students are sitting sat on the quad throughout the week. One faculty member that was here in 1988 reflected on what it was like to be on campus.
And it was like this black cloud of just sadness was hanging over this campus. And it was, and they had a very large gathering in Hendricks that night where people just came to be comforted and consoled and to hear whatever news they could hear.
2 films were played for students to attend in order to learn about the event. Both Impact and Seat 20D gave people different perspectives. While those in the Syracuse community still mourn the lives of those lost, they also wanted to celebrate the lives that they lived. The celebration of life took place in Schine on Thursday. Finally, to end the week, the Rose-Laying Ceremony and Convocation took place at Hendricks today. The tradition of Remembrance Week will continue next year. Teagan Brown, Citrus TV News.
These events give students an opportunity to learn about each of the students that died, as well as how the Syracuse community dealt with the tragic event that was the bombing of Pan Am Flight 103. Ricky, Liam, back to you.
Thanks, Teagan. We want to mention before we go that those who want to donate to Remembrance organizations can go to remembrance.syr.edu or remembrance.syr.edu, excuse me there. This has been one of the most important weeks, I think anyone would say, on the Syracuse campus. If anyone has made it out to the events, you know just how emotional these events are. I was able to make it out to the Rose-Laying Ceremony earlier today. It's hard not to tear up watching that.
Absolutely. I wasn't able to make it today due to scheduling conflicts, but I have attended in years past, and it's always just breathtaking, and it's an emotional event, an emotional way to cap off the week completely.
And that is all the time we have for you on Citrus TV News. For more of the latest, follow us on Citrus TV News on Twitter or check out our website at citrustv.com.
And for all of us here at Citrus TV, I'm Liam Crowley.
And I'm Ricky Sayer. We'll leave you with a live look at SU's place of remembrance. Good night, Syracuse.